right. Welcome in to Rise to the Victors, where we recap, Maize Blue review recaps, the Michigan football game every Sunday evening, where you can watch us live on YouTube on Sunday evening and then listen to the show on audio the next day on Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. We've got Josh Henschke, Davis Mosley. Brock, how do I say your last name?
It's Heilig.
Heilig. Brock Heilig, and none other than Zachary X Libby. No idea what your middle name is, but we've got the whole crew here minus Trevor. Great group in front of me. We were just talking before the show. It's quite the collection of human beings to break down Michigan football. So we're really excited to get things going for you guys. You heard week one last week. That was a preseason edition. This is the first show, the first podcast of our six where we get to actually break down a game. So that's exciting. Michigan runs through Colorado State 51-7, but nobody wants to talk about the score of the game. Everyone wants to talk about the quarterbacks. So we'll start there before we even dive into anything else. With the roundtable, the whole idea is hearing a diverse amount of opinions and giving each guy or gal at some point a platform to come at us with their opinion. And in doing so, we'll hear every side of every angle from the staff at Maize Blue Review. However, we haven't discussed this pre-show, so I wouldn't be surprised if this one is a bit of a consensus, and I wouldn't be shocked if we get some battling heads here. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. We'll start with Josh. Cade McNamara, 1 of 6 in the red zone yesterday. Of his 18 passes, completed half of them. Only one of them was an attempt that was beyond 10 yards. 2 drops, an overturned interception that usually ends in 1. Not a great day. Still commanded the offense the same way he did last year. Looked like he still had control and understood the audibles at the line. Was still able to, allow the run game to work. Looked like himself in that aspect, but from throwing the ball, quite the opposite of last year. Meanwhile, Mccarthy goes 5 of 5, 3 rushes for 50 yards. Both his drives ends in touchdowns. That's 2 compared to Cade's 1, and a huge contrast in the amount of drives and the volume they were both used. And now the table is kind of set for McCarthy at this point. I don't think it sets up really any better. So I'll hand it off to you and what you think about this situation as we approach week 2 of the season for Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it best. It really just it's served up to him on a platter, really. And I think a lot of it was self-inflicted from Cade, with his post-game comments, as well, as his play. I mean, yeah, you can make the argument that, his receivers didn't really do him any favors at certain points in the game, but yeah, I mean, when you're at the point where you're, getting booed in the first quarter, and then there's a pretty noticeable ringing of applause when JJ comes out there, I think that pretty much tells you all you need to know there in terms of, at least the fan temperature and in terms of which way they're heading. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about it just ad nauseum for the last couple of weeks and months, really, with what JJ can do with this offense. And, he did exactly what we've said and everyone else has said that he can do. He can move the ball with his feet, and that adds an element that, Cade doesn't really offer. He can offer it, but that's not a strength. And I think, once they allow JJ to kind of, take some shots and be creative and diverse with his passing game, I think you're creating a recipe for, a really complicated offense to scheme around, because you have to consider, JJ's ability to scramble and actually keep the ball on quarterback keepers. And then you have the ability, you have to focus on him being able to throw the ball too. And he had 100% completion rating on Saturday. But again, most of those were check downs or dump offs. So, I mean, it's not that's not the end all be all stat for him to, be named the starter. But yeah, I mean, the opportunity for him on Saturday, cannot be overstated. I mean, we're talking about a really, really bad Hawaii team, really bad Hawaii team. And, there's really no excuse to, not be successful on Saturday. I think, I think there'll be even bigger issues if JJ does struggle. But it's been kind of it's a kind of an awkward situation. I mean, I can understand the frustrations from Cade, but as a captain, you can't be saying this stuff after the game. I mean, essentially, he threw Jim Harbaugh under the bus, with his comments that he was surprised and he wasn't expecting stuff. It sounded like someone who went into this thing feeling like he was owed the starting job, which I can see that argument made. I mean, yeah, they won a Big Ten championship. They beat Ohio State, and he was a big part of that. But offenses and things change, systems change, and Michigan is quickly trending away from JJ's strengths. And this offense, I mean, we've talked about Matt Weiss countless times about how he wants to create a very Baltimore-like offense, and that plays right into JJ's strengths. I mean, yeah, you could technically run Baltimore's offense with a pocket passer or someone who at least can be mobile enough to keep a ball on a read option, but when you have Jim Harbaugh, using the word electric after the game in regards to describing JJ, you've got a pretty strong argument in JJ's favor here. And I mean, it just feels like, he's walking into like a third interview with the company president and the hiring manager who's planning to offer him the position after the game. And so again, I think this one is a major victory in JJ's favor, and I don't see that changing at all throughout the process. So again, I mean, something bad has to really happen before if JJ loses grip on this thing. And sorry, my cat is going crazy behind me and is getting all into my business while I'm talking. So I'll hand the floor off to someone else.
Yeah, I think you propose a good scenario, a possible scenario, in that JJ does struggle. I think we all look at each other like it's Hawaii. They are arguably the worst team in the country, and if it's not them, it could be UConn. So if he gets this opportunity against Hawaii and then gets to build onto that with a game against UConn, and then he gets to play Maryland, those are three extremely bad defenses. Now, granted, Maryland actually held Buffalo pretty well, but Buffalo's offense also might be one of the worst in the country. I think they had like 90 passing yards in that game. So whole point is this is setting up, and this is why I wrote in that article that it looks like they're begging JJ to win this job, because look at how this sets up. Of those three non-conference games, only one of those defenses had any life to it. If I'm Jim, I understand the simplicity of being like, hey, game one, game two, but the intricacies of it were it should have been one half against Colorado State, maybe a second half against Colorado State, and give Cade Hawaii, then give JJ UConn. And I think that's a little bit more down the middle. This really, and I don't think Harbaugh was like, hey, let's purposely give Cade Colorado State. It's just how it worked out. I mean, it looked a lot better for Cade to start the first game than if it would have been JJ, right? There was no way this was going to work out in Cade's favor, though. Like, we were sitting here talking about the scenarios, and no matter what, the position he was in and putting it into the hands of JJ to win the job or not tells you everything you need to know. They're like, JJ, please win this job. And then the way that it all sets up, which goes from Hawaii, that changes into UConn, that goes into Maryland, it's just, I mean, he's going to be on, like, he could be a Heisman conversation, like September Heisman conversation after those 3 games, not because he deserves it maybe, but because those 3 defenses are so bad and he has so much to prove that, and he's going to be utilized so much as the X factor in this offense. I mean, hey, this offense does everything it can to not let Cade be the dictator of the success when he's in. He's simple reads, simple throws. Sure, I mean, think about his air yardage yesterday. I don't have the exact, but for one throw and 18 attempts to go over 10 yards tells you everything you need to know. For every red zone trip to be a 1st and 2nd down run to set up a 3rd down pass every single time. And then after the last red zone turnover that was overturned, to run 7 straight rushing plays in a game where you're trying to make the quarterbacks a spotlight, because it's that's what this is all about at this point. And not to mention, at that point, it was already 31-0 or 27-0. It just, everything we saw on Saturday was like, hey, we really want JJ to win this job. Maybe that's not what they're thinking while they're doing it, but that's sure as hell what it looks like. So we'll move on. We'll take this to Brock. Give us your thoughts on everything that you saw on Saturday and where you think this quarterback competition goes from here. And we'll put you on the spot a little bit here. I guess if you're in Jim's shoes, how you, I guess, would handle it where it's at now, especially following those comments from Cade yesterday after the game.
Yeah, I think you guys said it best. It seems like they're kind of begging JJ to win the job. And, I saw when they announced this decision that Cade would start game 1, JJ would start game 2, that I saw either on Twitter or on the message board, some people were saying it was almost a formality, just having Cade take game 1 and then kind of hand the reins over to JJ. I didn't buy that at first, but after what we saw on Saturday, it's hard not to look at it that way now, because if you're JJ, I don't know how to say it, but like, what do you do on Saturday? Like, how bad can you play and still win the job? And he's not going to play bad because it's Hawaii. They're the worst. They're one of the worst teams in football, like you said, Brandon. So it seems like they're begging JJ to take the job. And if you're Harbaugh and Cade goes and says what he said after the game, I don't know. He's a captain, sure, but it sure seems like things are kind of swinging in JJ's favor here.
Yeah, and that's where things are going to get complicated, Brock, is that Cade is a captain. And we kind of had some foresight here when Cade was named captain. At that point, we were like, there was no mention of JJ getting any opportunity to start early. Cade had the best camp that he's had so far. And I've heard this point made already in the aftermath of yesterday, but I'll make it again. We've seen everything Cade is, right? Like we watched him at his best. We've watched him play his worst. We know exactly what both of those things look like. And the ceiling is not much further from the floor. They're close. And sometimes that's good. But in his case, and in this situation specifically, where he's up against a guy with a ceiling higher than any quarterback this program has seen since Drew Henson, I mean, it's unfortunate. And that's why, I really think it's a great story. I think Michigan fans and us as, analysts will talk about Cade McNamara and have to bring him up in conversations about this program for a very long time. He reinvigorated what it was to be a winning quarterback and a leader, because Michigan's quarterbacks were not leaders in the past. Shea Patterson was not a leader, right? Like, I don't really think Wilton Speight was much of a leader. Okay, like personally, and that's nothing against those guys. It just wasn't their style, right? Cade got to where he is because of that, because of his persistency to be that. Cade came here like, I'm going to be a captain of Michigan, and, through hell and high water, he got there. But unfortunately, J.J. McCarthy exists, and we're in this spot, and that's unfortunate for him. But I think that's kind of the reality of the situation. So we will go over to Davey Scoops, Mr. Mosley, J.J. McCarthy yesterday. I know you paid attention to his snaps. I guess tell me what you saw from him that you were maybe surprised by, whether it was good or bad, something that you saw from JJ on Saturday that maybe you didn't expect to see right away. To me, I think it starts with the run game and just how often he was running it and the situation it was. So go ahead and break it down for us from what you saw.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me more so than anything else was the fact that it really felt like that there was an offense designed for him. As soon as he came in, it felt like they said, okay, go. The play calling for the majority of the game felt pedestrian. It felt like we were watching a preseason football game, and it just wasn't what we saw last year. We had, even though we were a majority running team last year, and Michigan ran the ball a lot last year, there was still a lot of interesting designs, concepts, and that wasn't there yesterday. It just wasn't. And then JJ comes in and takes over, and you got bluff zone, and then he rolls out right and hits a 10-yard pass. It just felt like there was a real offense designed for him in place as soon as he came into the game. And I think that will be seen Saturday. I think that will be seen against Hawaii. And I was just impressed with how he operated out there. You know, what we saw from him last season was a lot of shots. He took you know, some more dangerous passes, and he threw three checkdowns or so. And that was good. He went through his progressions, and even on plays that maybe he rolled out a little bit and had to create with his legs, he still hit the check down. I remember he hit CJ Stokes for, you know, 4 yards or whatever, and then he took it and made it into 15 or whatever it was. That didn't happen last year. That's something that Cade did for Michigan last year. He kept the chains moving, and if JJ is going to keep the chains moving like that on third downs, you know, picking up the yards that he needs to, there's just no way he doesn't take the job and run with it. That's what I saw from him. Just looked like a quarterback one. That's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. He did look like the game, and Harbaugh said this after the game. He looked like the game had slowed down for him a little bit, right? And last year, he certainly looked like a true freshman playing quarterback. I mean, that Dalen Baldwin pass from game one last year was terrific, but how often does that play out the way that it did against teams that he's going to have to face if he's going to be quarterback one somewhere down the line in November, for instance? So to see him make those throws, and not to mention, we know how much Harbaugh pays attention to intricacies, right? We heard from him yesterday when he was complimenting Cade that running the ball successfully as an offense isn't just based on the O-line and the running back. The quarterback has to also be in sync there too, and praised him for that. And so for JJ to be able to make those throws, Davis, like you mentioned, certainly stands out. So Libby, my friend, my recruiting buddy, the guy who knows everything and is everywhere. Also, shout out, pretty good photographer, and I was pleasantly surprised. And you're too humble because it was good, and you just were afraid to admit it. So for everyone watching and listening, Zach Libby is also a terrific photographer. So you'll be seeing a lot of those. All right. From a recruiting perspective, J.J. McCarthy is far more electric and exciting than Cade McNamara. We've discussed that from a program perspective, but let's take that to recruiting. J.J. McCarthy gets this job next week. What does that change for Michigan from a recruiting perspective when they're about to see an offense that is far more, I guess, as Davis said, there is an offense designed for JJ. So we're going to see a far more dynamic offense. It's not just going to be the run it down your throat. Now, they will run the crap out of the ball, but it will be different. It will be more dynamic. So what do you think about McCarthy getting this job from a recruiting perspective? How will it impact guys like Jaden Davis and beyond?
Well, with the camera, I learned how to automate everything. So what looks great, is just based on camera editing. So I'm not going to take credit on that, but thank you, though. I think it's the fact that Jaden Davis is going to be there obviously shows that Michigan might be more, I guess, willing to throw the ball and highlight JJ more, just to give Jaden a sense of who he's going to be behind if he commits to Michigan. It's also worth mentioning that JJ and Jaden are really good friends now, considering that Jaden has visited twice. JJ has really gotten close with pretty much the entire family, so having him there and seeing JJ and really his first start ever is going to be something to watch. I think it'll be good for Jaden to take notes on what Michigan is going to have under JJ, in the next 2 years if he stays. Maybe gives him an idea of what he would be expected out of Michigan should he commit to. I think there's similarities that could be made with Jaden between both Cade and JJ. So I think it would be worth for Jane at least to, do some scouting, do some notes, just really hone in on what JJ does, despite it being against Hawaii or not. Like it's a good opportunity to see firsthand of what the future is like and what Michigan expects out of its quarterbacks in the next 3 to 5 years. So no, that's I know Josh mentioned once 2 weeks ago that it's a conspiracy about Jane going up at the same time that JJ was starting. So I don't want to confirm it, but it holds some truth to it, honestly.
I don't look so stupid now, do I?
No, you're always right. That's why you're the best boss we've ever had.
Oh boy, that was blatant brown nosing there. Blatant.
I'm the best at that. But no, I think if Jane goes up with the rest of the guys too from Providence State, like Jordan Shipp and Shane Goodwin, it would just be the perfect, I guess, outlier of what these guys can expect out of an offense that's so prolific of what Michigan fans expect out of JJ McCarthy. So no, if Hawaii wasn't as big of a weekend as it already once was, or what's considered, having JJ as a starter only heightens that. So it'll be good to watch.
Certainly will. So many storylines to pay attention to as we groove into week 2. Let's position away from the quarterbacks. We've talked about it so much, and we will unfortunately continue to each day until Saturday, and probably for at least a few days thereafter, and maybe longer. So get comfortable with that. But let's move on from it for now, because the defense, holy hell. Hey, how are you, Jesse Minter? Hell of a day. 12 tackles for loss, or 11. I think it might have been 11, and 7 sacks. I mean, the number one conversation for the defensive line from the day they lost to Georgia until kickoff was, how do you replace Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo? And nobody asked the question, at least nationally, what is Michigan doing to replace it? It was more so, how are they going to do it? Lucky for Michigan, they had a better problem-solving process than those who think that they didn't, and came up with a defensive line that's actually extremely productive. And we all knew that the interior of the defensive line was going to be exponentially better than it was last year. However, what we didn't know was that Ayabi Anoma existed and was going to come back to Michigan, or going to come to Michigan and come back to FCS and play, which he looked incredible. We didn't know that the interior was going to get the pass rush that it had. We knew Mozzie Smith was going to be a nightmare on run plays, but he entirely changed how the quarterback's pocket presence was after the first series, and therefore his triple team started to open things up for guys like Anoma, Derek Moore, Braden McGregor, and the list goes on and on and on. So with that being said, so much depth on the defensive line. 11 guys rotated in with the starters, and that opens a question. I want each of you guys, and we're going to do a little draft here, We'll start with, you know what? I'll talk about the pick in a second, but what I want each of you to do is pick one guy from that D line that you think is going to be productive, or one guy that shocked you with his production yesterday. I will start, of course. I'm selfish. And then I'll hand it off to Josh. We'll go in the same order that you just went. Sorry, Libby. I'm going to start with Braden McGregor. I mean, he was easily the biggest shock to me defensively, like top to bottom. I know that Sanders still, everyone's laughing but me, and I'm talking, so surely I'm doing something stupid. Sanders still looked good, and the safeties looked really good. But from a defensive line perspective, I don't think anybody was more shocking than Braden McGregor, just because we've always heard about how good Braden McGregor is. We've always heard about how good Braden McGregor could be. The physical traits have always been there. It's always been a question of the intangibles. But he looked like a full body of work on Saturday with the production he had and how often he was getting back. He had a swim move that was very reminiscent of Hutch in that game as well on his sack. So really positive things. McGregor. Michigan needs pass rushers, man. We've talked about it, right? And the whole question was the pressure. Now they're getting it from their interior, but they still need those edge guys, right? Well, Mike Morris, who's not a pure edge rusher, showed how good of a player he is, like in the flat, made a play on the hash. if they can combine guys like Mike Morris and Mozzie Smith and Chris Jenkins with guys like Iyabi Anoma, Derek Moore, and Braden McGregor, that is a recipe for a lot of success. But Braden McGregor shocked me, and his production means so much, I think, to this defensive line because it just gives them another piece to work with and to develop on the edge of the defense, which is everything for their defense in creating pressure and allowing those defensive backs to work when they're not in a disguised blitz and they're dropping into coverage. So I will hand it off to Josh. My pick is Braden McGregor. Who shocked you the most? We won't ask the same question to the next guy because this is going to get too deep once we get to the fifth guy with who shocked you the most. So, Josh, we'll start with your question being who shocked you the most on the D-line yesterday?
That would have been, McGregor would have been my guess, or my guess, my prediction myself. I think, we heard a lot about how, he was climbing up the depth chart, but still not fully back to his previous self when he, when he came in with a shoulder injury that needed surgery. I think he's the closest thing physically to Aiden Hutchinson that Michigan has. I mean, we're talking from a physical standpoint, a lot of the moves, and again, he's been behind Aiden this whole time. So I mean, no better person to learn from than Aiden himself. And yeah, so if I can't pick McGregor, I would say something like Iyabi Anoma probably would be my pick. Out there the very first snap and gets a sack. It's tough because they have a lot of guys, Mike Morris, Jalen Harrell, Chris Jenkins. I mean, there's so many names that you could pick from and not be wrong. And, for people who are watching the video of our recording right now, I've been putting comments on the bottom of our screen here. And, a lot of people here have been saying how familiar, McGregor is to Aiden, and they're 100% right. And, there's a joke here that from Malachi that said, dude stole Hutch's entire moveset. And it's true. And it's not a bad person to steal from too. So if you're going to steal from someone, you steal from a number 2 overall pick in the draft. That's totally fine. But yeah, my pick would probably be Anoma. I'm excited to see how he kind of evolves moving forward. As his role kind of expands a little bit. And yeah, you gotta like what he brought, not just from a physical standpoint, but the guy's got speed. He's got the ability to create pressure. Yeah, just a lot of positives from that position group. A lot of positives that we weren't necessarily sure if it was going to show up. You're talking about a group that had 7 sacks this year, and so far this year in game 1 with a unit last year that had 34 total. So you're off to a really good start. And, these numbers might be inflated a little bit, week 1 and week 2, because you've got an arguably even worse offensive line that they're going up against. So, yeah, a lot of good there. But, yeah, Iyabi Anoma would be my pick.
Yeah, Colorado State's offensive line, 4 transfer starters who are playing their first game together in the big house, not to mention the 5th lineman.
Brandon, your mic is muted.
I don't know what. It's hard to get overly excited about Michigan's defensive line. Yet, because of how bad Colorado State's O-line was. Not sure where we left off, but 4 transfer starters playing their first game together in the big house, not to mention the 5th tackle outside of there was just playing his first snap for the program, despite being a redshirt sophomore until that point. So we should wait and see until we can start to truly judge it. But at the very least, the raw profile of what this defensive line can be, we got some answers there, and they're a lot more encouraging than we anticipated. So Davis, we'll go over to you, get your thoughts on the freshman defensive line. We'll talk about Mason Graham, Derek Moore, a couple others mixed in there. Who impressed you most of the freshmen, and who do you think is going to have the biggest impact this season after one game, in your opinion, from the freshman group? And that would probably be specifically nailed down to Moore and Grant, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking most, highest expectations for a freshman, you got to go Mason Graham, just because he was announced as a starter along the defensive line for the base package. You have to go there, but I really liked what I saw from Derek Moore in his limited snaps. When he went in, he made an explosive play on the quarterback, and it was very impressive. His first step is really great, and he's going to be a great player. I really like both of them, and I think Kenneth Grant is another freshman that we're going to be talking about at some point. I think the three of them are going to be staples along the line. But for expectations, you have to go Mason Graham, just because the sheer snaps he's going to get is going to outweigh both Grant and Moore.
All right, we will position over to Libby, because Brock, you went first last time, so we'll do a little snake style here. So we'll go to Libby. From a recruiting perspective, Michigan's defensive line got some infusions with Moore and Graham this year, like we just touched on with Davis. So from what you can see from the defensive line recruiting this year, I know they like what they have. Of that group, who do you think has the best opportunity to end up like one of those two and playing and contributing in week 1 next year?
I'll say first about the freshmen, Derek and Anoma. The fact that they're both from Baltimore St. Francis just shows how good of a relationship they have with that program with Michigan. Biff Pogge is still on that staff with Michigan and former head coach. So getting those talents from such a nationally known program just indicates how great of a recruiting Michigan does. But no, with the 23 class, they're pretty squared away in terms of edge rushers with Etta, Collins, Shempon, and everyone. Brooks Barr is another one that could make an immediate impact just based on his overall frame. Like right now, he's about 280, and he gained about 70 pounds this offseason. So for him to be able to work under Ben Herbert this next year will only help, just getting his twitch back. No, Collins Shempon is one that I could easily see come to this program and make some noise. I know that this season is pretty much his first year back since his freshman year after the COVID year and electing not to play last year just because of what was going on with this high school. So for him at his new school to, really shine. And if you've seen highlights of Friday's game with Collins, he almost took a turnover back for a touchdown. So that was cool to see. But no, he's one to look out for in terms of just overall speed, overall agility, his ability to bend and dip against offensive linemen. He's one with a quick punch, powerful first step. He's one to look out for if he's able to, continue his progression leading up to next August. So he's one to look out for in terms of just one that, Michigan could have helpful benefits from next year's freshman class.
I'll also add too on Collins. Michigan likes him a lot. The staff love him. They love him, and they really think he's got the label of a freak. And I know multiple coaches have labeled him as a freak. So they're really excited about him, and it's easy to see why. There's a lot of talent there that can be tapped into. So that's an exciting addition to the class as well. And Michigan loves their edge rushers in general. They think that's their strongest position group out of the entire recruiting classes, their edge rushing recruiting. So they're really excited about what they have. So they've got a lot of good there, a lot of untapped potential.
All right. We will end the segment here about the defense. And Brock, I know we've had some repetition here in what we've talked about, so I'll give you an opportunity to kind of differentiate away from that here and talk about the defensive backs as a whole, corners and safeties. We didn't really have much of a discussion about the cornerbacks going into the season because it was such an easy ordeal, and Mike Acuna makes his appearance that he always makes on the show with that meow. But that being said, with the safety play was what we talked about, right? We were a little unsure there, having to replace Dax Hill, and Brad Hawkins is a tall order. RJ Moten, Rod Moore, and Mccarthy Page looked pretty good. I mean, overtop help was there. I mean, it took 2 drives, and on the first play or second play of the second drive, Rod Moore got the interception, showed the overtop that they can handle it pretty well. There's a lot of, against an air raid offense, not a lot of success passing the ball, aside from the Will Johnson touchdown late in the game. That was honestly a perfect ball from the quarterback. I went back and watched it, and Will really didn't miss it by much. It was Harbaugh said it was an inch, and he sometimes overstates things, but I really don't think he was overstating that. So, Brock, we'll hand it off to you. Talk about the defensive backs, what you saw there, and what impressed you about, especially that, or specifically that safety group.
Tell you what, Rod Moore is a stud. The dude is just incredible. He had the interception yesterday. I've got his stats right here. 2 solo tackles, 2 assisted tackles, and a half a sack, along with the interception. What he did against Ohio State last year was understated completely, in my opinion. For a sophomore, he's got to be one of the best young safeties in the Big Ten, if not in the whole country. And we heard RJ Moten talking earlier before the season started about how he wants to maybe solidify himself as one of the best safeties in the country, if not the best safety in the country. And Mccarthy Page, if I can find him here, where's he at? Yeah, 2 tackles, 1 assisted tackle. Safeties are looking good. Even though they lost Daxton Hill, Brad Hawkins, they reloaded for sure. Rod Moore's a stud, like I said. RJ Moten, Mccarthy Page, they got a good group back there. So good things to look forward to in the secondary.
All right, so that covers the offense and the defense. We don't need to dive too deep into the special teams. Again, it was, like always, extremely successful in that category for Michigan. All touchbacks. Even Tommy Doman came in and placed a touchback, the freshman phenom from St. Mary's. He might be a sophomore, actually. I think he's a sophomore now, academically at least. But coverage units, tremendous yesterday, kickoff and punts. So I think we saw what we expected. No block punts. That's probably the one thing that didn't occur that Michigan probably wanted to secure. But let's take a look at what the people are saying. Kind of like this comment here from Antoine. He is a regular on Dennis's show, as well as all of our YouTube lives. And he mentioned Michigan using Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards in the backfield at the same time, since they're both passing and running threats like the 49ers did back in the day. Back in the day is a relative term, so I don't know when. I know that the 49ers used a Debo package like last year, but I don't know where we're at with this one specifically. However, I do know the point he's trying to make, which is Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum being in the backfield together, which is a great idea in my opinion. So let's talk about Antoine's comment there. We'll give someone the opportunity to talk about this instead of going around the room here towards the end of the show. We got about 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes left, and we'll start with some quick hitters. Let's hand it over to Josh and what you think Michigan can do, and maybe if Michigan already has this idea to have both of those guys back there and use their versatility to the maximum potential.
Yeah, I do know that that's discussed, and that's been a thing that they've been practicing. They have a package where both are on the field at the same time, just like they've had a package for Alex Orji too that we saw. They like to use him as a mobile guy, and they did just that. So I don't know how quickly we'll ever see Blake and Donovan out in the field at the same time. I mean, I think that's something that should be reserved more for down the line. I don't think you should really. I mean, you can if you'd like, but you'd rather keep it as vanilla as possible against a team like Hawaii, just because you can. Really, I mean, you can do that next week too against UConn. You don't have to show really much of anything until arguably Iowa. So I do know it's definitely a thing. Blake and Donovan in the backfield at the same time. Both are very capable receiving backs too, so that's another wrinkle you can add in there with Donovan being probably the better receiver of the two. But yeah, I mean, I think eventually we'll probably see that. Maybe not in the near future, but that's okay. I mean, I don't think they'll have to pull that out for quite some time. But I know that Michigan definitely has some tricks up their sleeve that they're saving for special occasions. And, once we see, the playbook open up fully and not be so vanilla, I think, we'll see a variety of different plays and packages and such.
All right. So we know how creative Michigan gets when J.J. McCarthy is in at quarterback. The offense, like Davis pointed out earlier, it changes entirely when McCarthy is in the game. And begs the question, if you can do more with McCarthy, then what else is there to talk about? It's obvious when he goes in, things change. And if Edwards and Corum and McCarthy are split in the same backfield at some point this season, which I think is a reality and seems almost inevitable at this point, that's pretty nuts for a school that, 3 years ago, for a program, I should say, that 3 years ago, Van Sumeren, who I know just had a great game at linebacker, but regardless, Van Sumeren was the RB2 or the RB3 at some point. So that's a night and day difference to look at a backfield that has 3 rushing threats right there. And we can all agree that J.J. McCarthy is a much better runner than Joe Milton. And at one point, I think a majority of the national media bought into like a Cam Newton-esque campaign from Milton in 2020, who is 25% of the runner that McCarthy is. So you think about Edwards and Corum and McCarthy back there. Those are scary hours, as Drake would say. So, guys, we're at the 41st minute. We'll end it with some rapid fire here. Before the show ends, I will give you guys each chance to kind of take about 30 seconds to a minute to give your final verdict on what your takeaways are from Michigan's game against Colorado State, apart from the quarterback play, because I know we've heard about that. So apart from what we've covered, the quarterback play, the defensive line play, anything else on top of that that you can take away, 30 seconds to a minute. We will start with Libby, who's not even looking. We'll start with Josh. Oh, my God. Libby, I was kidding, bud. I was kidding.
Yeah, for recruiting wise, a lot of in-state guys. If you want to get see the reactions, go on our forum. We're going to be posting the reactions on our front page in a little bit after this interview. So, like I said, a lot of in-state guys outside of Quinn Morris from Illinois. No, it's going to be a bigger attendee list next week at Hawaii, so that'll be fun to watch.
Next week at Hawaii is going to be the visitors list, huh?
Wait, what?
You said next week at Hawaii.
Oh,
I
yeah,
no,
going
to Hawaii next
I
week.
will be at Hawaii scouting.
Yeah.
All
right.
So I'll be watching the game from there.
Appreciate that. All right, Libby. We will go to Brock. Give us your takeaways, sir.
Yeah, we already kind of touched on it a little bit, but 7 sacks on the defensive line. And like we already talked about, numerous transfers on Colorado State's offensive line, but still 7 sacks as a team. It's good to see. When we were talking earlier about the defensive lineman, Brandon, you took my my pick on McGregor, and then Josh went right ahead and then went to Enoma. Those are my top 2. But yeah, it looked good. Seemed like every time I was looking up, they were rotating in defensive linemen. So defensive line by committee we might see this year throughout the season. Who knows? But it was good to see 7 sacks on Saturday.
Yeah, perhaps the biggest X factor in having a defensive line is fresh legs and getting guys who can go into those one-on-one battles with linemen fresh off the bench after those linemen are on their 10th, 11th play of the drive. And that's a luxury Michigan has that most programs do not. Antoine brought up Alex Orji and using him as a option package. We will bring up the Alex Orji apologist. I don't even know what you would title this, but Josh had a lot of scoop on Alex Orji. I don't even think apologist is the right way to label it. But either way, the guy who let us all know that Alex Orji was going to be exactly what we saw on Saturday. And Josh, you can expound on this, but is that going to continue? Or do you think that's just a week 1 thing? You think that's a non-conference thing? Or do you think Alex Orji is going to get a legitimate goal line package for the rest of the season? And you can roll this in your takeaways.
Yeah. I mean, at least 4 games. I mean, you know, with this red shirt rule, these guys are allowed 4 games to, you know, to play in 4 games before they can redshirt. So I don't see why it wouldn't continue, and I also don't see why, you know, it wouldn't continue beyond the 4-game rule. I mean, it worked. It was successful. I think Michigan really likes what Orji does. I think he's an athletic guy. We don't really know what he is as a passer. You know, I don't think he's some, you know, uber talented, you know, hidden gem passer that Michigan is, you know, waiting to hold back. But, you know, from an athletic standpoint, I think, you know, they've used him in a couple different ways. You know, they've used him in a running back role too. So we'll kind of see what happens with that. But yeah, I would not. I mean, as long as it continues to be successful and continues to, you know, gain positive yards, I don't see why they don't continue that Alex Orji package. I really don't. But, you know, my big takeaway, I think, would be the pleasant surprise that CJ Stokes was at RB3. I think he showed a really nice first step and a really quick burst that I didn't think he had. I thought he was more of a physical type of guy. I mean, he still is, but you know, he's got some speed to him too. So he's going to be a really intriguing guy as the season goes on. You know, if they do decide to trust him picking up the tough yards, you know, Donovan showed a little bit that he's, you know, growing into that role and could be the guy. But, you know, if you want a specific bruiser, you know, you can't go wrong with CJ Stokes. And he's got that speed with him too. So, yeah, a lot of good things, you know, that will hopefully continue into next week. Which, you know, again, you can't take too much away from these first 3 weeks or so, but you can take away enough to feel good about where things are headed. And yeah, defensively, I definitely feel good about it too.
Yeah, the CJ Stokes hype train might have started. I really liked his tape. I wrote about it. Shoot, when was that? November, October, somewhere. It was real early. It was almost a year ago now, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, CJ Stokes' high school tape was something else. His competition was abysmal, and that was really the question mark coming in for him, was how it was going to translate. But everything we've heard out of camp is that it translated well, and that was evidenced on Saturday. All right, Davis, you are wrapping us up with your takeaways from Saturday.
Well, I think I've got the perfect way to wrap it up, and it's going to be with what Josh said. We don't really know a whole lot until we start playing some better teams. You know, these 3 first weeks, you get Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn. And yes, well, you'll know a little bit. You won't know until Iowa what you really, really have. You know, I think that everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt because of the competition level. But there's been some really promising things that we've seen, like the defensive edge pressure. I like CJ Stokes as well. I think he was, you know, really, really nice. And I thought JJ played really well in his limited snaps. I think there's a lot of things to like, but at the end of the day, you're playing Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn. I want to see how it looks when you play Maryland, Iowa, Penn State, Michigan State. And the great thing about it is we're going to get that. We don't have to speculate. We just got to wait a few weeks and we'll get it. So that's my takeaway. We look good, but let's see it against some real teams.
Well, Davis, I hate to tell you this, but your job, if this is what you're going to do, is to do exactly what you just said you're not going to do, and that is bring up talking points in between each game, even though we truly don't know anything until they play. That is quite literally our job. All right, well, for another episode of Rise to the Victors, the second episode, first one after a game, pretty good, I think. I don't want to toot our own horn or anything. Pretty solid. Next week after Hawaii, I'm sure it will be the JJ McCarthy episode, or it will be what on earth are we going to do about analyzing a quarterback situation where both guys just don't want to win it, because that's pretty much the only way that is in the conversation next week. So with that being said, it is Labor Day weekend. So if you're watching this and you're off tomorrow, congratulations, because we are not. And we do not sleep after August 31st. So enjoy your holiday. We will be at Schembechler Hall at 10:30 in the morning and then returning at 7 p.m. and doing what we love best, and that is covering the hell out of this program. So we will see and talk to you guys tomorrow. Dennis Fithian is at 1 p.m. You'll get this show on audio tomorrow as well, and then you'll see us on video again on Tuesday when Libby, Mosley, and some combination of Josh and I will be on the recruiting show, Who's Got Next, on Wednesday, and you're also getting another special episode of that. We'll announce that. And then on Thursday, you get the show for Josh and I, Hail to the Podcast, and on Friday, Sharpening the Edge. And in between there, a daily show from Dennis every day at 1 p.m. So the amount of audio and digital that you can consume within our umbrella of Maize Blue Review is endless. So go consume it. We will talk to you guys from Rise to the Victors as a program next week, but consume us in many different ways in between then. We'll talk to you then. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend, and see you on the other side.